Today we are working on a 2000 Honda Civic HX two-door coupe, and we are replacing the front brake rotors and front brake pads. All these cars come with front disc rotors instead of drums, as is pretty standard after the early 90s Civics. This model itself has rear drum brakes on it as well. Today we're just replacing the rotors and front brake pads. So to get this started, tools you're going to need: your handy dandy floor jack or any such jack. I would prefer to use a bottle jack, but I do not have a bottle jack short enough to fit into this car. A jack stand. I use a DeWalt XR impact wrench, not impact driver, impact wrench. I got some PB blaster on the side, some Valvoline synthetic lube for said parts, paper towels, got ourselves a small hammer, large channel locks, flathead screwdriver. This is the 6-inch length. I also have a universal joint on a 17mm socket, as well as a 19mm socket, and a 3/8 drive ratchet, and some gloves, as is always a good idea, especially when doing brake work. I also keep on side my flashlight. I've got myself a brand new pair of rotors, front rotors from AutoZone, some Duralast Max brake pads, and some brand new brake pad clips. Always good to get the kits with the new clips. These tend to be main causes of squealing brakes. These either touching the rotor or are shaken against the side of the caliper mounting bracket. They start to squeak and scrape, and they can sound like bad brakes, but they're usually just problematic little clips. So what we're going to do to get started, we're going to jack the car up with our floor jack. Let's get some right over here. I prefer to jack off of this point right here. If you look on your car, it's just kind of flat, skinny little piece of the frame. It sticks down. This is designed for 2-post lifts to pick these cars up across, so you can also use them on your jacks to jack up off of, as long as you don't put any lateral forces in plane, basically, rather than up or down. Otherwise you may bend it. So you jack it up there. I prefer to come put my jack stand at the front of the car, up on the tie-down point for towing. If you look up under here, you'll see a little towing point. It's a nice thin little piece of metal, thick in this sense, I guess. Tie yourself off to with your jack stand, set your car down on it, release the jack. It is advised not to leave your car up on jacks without jack stands, as they may decompress. We then go do the 4 19mm lug nuts off. Usually you want to do these while the car is on the ground, break them loose if you're not using an electric impact or a pneumatic impact. It's easy to do with a breaker bar. I usually use an 18-inch breaker bar. They come pretty loose pretty easily, otherwise they're on too tight. Then you would jack it up after loosening them, take them off, remove the wheel. I have already lifted mine, removed my lug nuts. My wheel comes off. A large suggestion from a few sources I've seen is that you stick your tire under your vehicle while you work with it off. I opt not to do that, as I haven't had a car fall on me yet with this problem, but there's a chance you may apply some force that knocks the car over. And this is part of being careful what you're doing. So normally if you're coming down here and this is completely stock, there'll be 2 screws, one here and one down here. These will be Phillips head. You'll want to remove these. I find it extremely helpful to do these with the impact wrench on the lowest setting possible. I use my hammer impact set here, designed to be hammered upon. Nice little ratchet that can be hit with a hammer and apply some torque. I don't use this tool itself. I use these extremely large Phillips heads that they have. I believe these are Phillips number, I want to say 3. Yes. And I use these to get these screws off. I put them in the impact and very slowly torque it. It's much more effective to do it this way rather than trying to go at them with a Phillips in a ratchet or just a plain old screwdriver. They tend to get stripped very easily, hence why this car has none. These screws help align the rotor when they're in to keep it flush to the hub assembly and keep the brake pads pressed on evenly. Most people disregard these screws once they come off and get lost the first time or they get broken. My goal is to get some new ones from Honda and replace those. So once you get that free, your rotor should have some play. If it's been on there for a while and it's got a decent amount of corrosion between it and the hub assembly, or it's just been tightly pressed for long periods of time, you have two little access holes here with threading. I believe these are M12 by, I want to say 1.25. You can stick a bolt in there and drive it in, and what it does is it presses on the hub assembly and pushes the rotor off. You want to do the same thing on both sides, either with one bolt alternating as you loosen a little bit, or two bolts at the same time would be preferred. You don't want to apply that torque all the way out, you just want to make sure you get some play, as there should be some right now. Then you're going to come to the back of your caliper, which is right here. Come to the back of your caliper, and down here on the side there's a little 12mm bolt. You're going to want to get that loose. Out it comes. These ones tend to have corrosion on them, on that threading and rod length there. It tends to get a little corroded between it and the guide that's inside of the caliper. You then want to grab down here at the bottom of the caliper bracket and pull it up. Mine is a little bit stiff. This is the second one I'm doing, and the other one was the same way. They're a bit stiff in their right here, there's their other guide. This one does not have a bolt on it, as is common with most calipers. They'll have a bolt top and bottom for you to undo that's on a guide. These ones do not. They have a pin up here that lets them swing, so you don't actually have to undo that bolt to get the swing like a normal caliper, and it would come up, and then you're able to go in and take your pads out. These ones are designed to be picked out from the bottom to top, the way the springs in the clips are designed. And take note of which way your pads go. The non-marked pad is the front pad. And you'll understand what that means in a second. The marked pad is the one with a little stick on it. It goes in the back and the mark goes up. This is to make sure you put the right pad on the right side. And if you were just doing brake pads, you just take those out, put new ones in, compress your caliper piston, and you'd be good to go. What I need to do in this situation is I need to remove this caliper from its other pin here, which you see is very stiff. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to peel back the boot around the guide. I'm going to squirt some PB Blaster in there as lube and a little bit of breakdown material, and I'm going to continue to rotate this up and down, up and down, up and down until it gets some back and forth play, and it should come right off. And then I'm going to clean the shaft and the guide itself, some PB and some shop towels, and then I'm going to lube them with some Valvoline synthetic lube. Make sure they stay nice and movable, because they should be able to basically work like this other one you have on the bottom side. It can just bounce back and forth. That's what this should be able to do, is just bounce back and forth. So if that's not a problem, you should have been able to get those out, get that up, and then on the back side here, there are these two 17mm bolts that hold the bracket in. You're going to want to take those out, and then this bracket will come off as a whole. You're going to want to hang your caliper on something, the strut, the upper control arm, something up here. Sometimes a zip tie is helpful to hold it up. You don't want to hang it on your hose. Once that bracket's off, you're then going to just pull the rotor off, and it will come right off, and you're going to put your new rotor on and do everything in reverse order. Don't forget to either get a caliper compressor tool to do this, but what I use instead is a set of large channel locks. This works extremely well to compress these cheap, easy, and always there, rather than having to either go rent a caliper compressor or buy one. That will about do it for this entire front brake replacement job. Again, if you had these little screws and you lose them, it's not a big deal to put it back on without them. It's pretty standard for most car companies to have it designed as such that you don't need these little screws. If you still have them, I suggest put them back in nice and tight. They help align the rotor, and they keep things more straight in your brake pads and rotor in the long run.